It's a lovely Monday afternoon here in Vancouver, BC. So if you hear any of the leaf blowers, the weed whackers, etc. going on outside in this audio commentary, then hey, that's my apologies. I can't really do anything about that. If these guys don't go out there and do their jobs, then we're gonna have leaves and debris and all this other crap out on our streets for a long time, so I'm grateful for them. Not really grateful for the audio, though. But either way, today we're going over to the Edmonton Oilers and talking about a guy that might, in some form or another, be a target for a team in the East. We're going over onto an article on Boston Hockey Now. And of course, you know, I'm doing the intro and talking about this in a mysterious way, but you kind of already know who we're talking about here. It's in the title. It's in the thumbnail. This article is published by Jimmy Murphy 6 days ago on May 22nd. Or no, not 6 days ago. A week ago, excuse me. I'm blind. But the article is titled, "This, the Boston Bruins, they need centers. The Oilers, they need defense. Is there a match here?" As always, link is going to be in the description if you want to go ahead and read this piece yourself. But essentially, what Jimmy Murphy goes out there and writes about when it comes to the Bruins is their need for a C. When asked Monday about potential external replacements at center the Boston Bruins could target if Bergeron and David Krejci retire, yeah, talk about run-on sentences, eh? An NHL source told Boston Hockey Now that the Oilers, quote-unquote, might move 30-year-old center Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and that the Oilers are looking for a defenseman in the return. More on that below. Like all the Capstrapped teams sitting at home, while the league's Final Four battle it out in the conference finals, the Bruins and the Oilers are up against it. Both still would love to make a hockey trade to get over the hump in the Stanley Cup Playoffs, but also make trades to unload used salary cap space and get younger. Some draft capital wouldn't really hurt either. And so before we continue any further, let's go over the profile here of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. As the article said, 30 years old. It's kind of crazy to me that he's 30 because it feels like yesterday that he was drafted first overall and playing in the NHL as a rookie, but yeah, time flies, doesn't it? He's 30 years old, 6 feet, 183 left-handed center, signed till the end of 2029, making $5.125 million a year. Now, I don't know about you, but if Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is able to go out there and consistently get 100 points every year, this 5.125 AAV might seem like an absolute steal. You know how everybody was talking about how Draisaitl's contract at 8.5 was a steal? Well, Nugent-Hopkins, while he's not the player that Draisaitl is, he might be in that same sort of steal of a contract territory, maybe to a lesser degree. We know that Nugent-Hopkins is not as good as Draisaitl. He's not as expensive as Draisaitl either. But still, getting 100 points out of my $5.1 million center is pretty good. And yeah, Nugent-Hopkins had 100 points this previous season, 104 actually. 37 goals, 67 assists in 82 games played. I'd be remiss to say that I thought this was going to happen for sure, because I realistically didn't think that Nugent-Hopkins had it in him to be a point-per-game guy even, at the very least. Sure, he had a 61-point and 65-game campaign in 2019-20, he had the double point-per-game season in the playoffs in that same year, and while Nugent-Hopkins has been a pretty stable and pretty all-right player, 100 points just kind of came out of nowhere in my opinion. But it's good for him, it's good for everybody in Edmonton, it's good for the Oilers organization because this is a guy providing value on a cheap contract comparative to what he gives. So this is a good player, all things considered. Not a top-of-the-line superstar, but a good player. And if you go back over onto the article, this is what Boston Bruins GM Don Sweeney says. He's prepared the media and fans for change already. We're not going to be the same team, but our mandate internally, collectively as a group, is that we have a really strong core of guys that hopefully, as Jim was talking about, will continue to grow. We'll take leadership responsibility moving forward, regardless of whether or not Patrice or David walk back through the door because they need to, Sweeney told the media back on May 9th. This is where the quotes come in from the NHL executives speaking to Boston Hockey Now. As an NHL executive source pointed out to Boston Hockey Now last week, the salary cap hell Sweeney is about to enter will likely force the Bruins GM to move a player on the NHL trade market that he doesn't necessarily want to trade. They've got no choice, right? The executive source told Boston Hockey Now, rhetorically last Thursday. They're going to be moving guys that they don't really want to move, but they have to. But they may move guys. They don't have to change it up just because of the salary cap. Donnie said it already. Change is coming. Now, the article then goes over into a discussion about Ryan McLeod and asks whether or not the Bruins would be interested in him and his services. But realistically, the guy that is the main target here that I think would be intriguing to talk about is Nugent-Hopkins. The article concludes at the end that maybe a trade of Nugent-Hopkins for Grzelcyk makes some sort of sense just in terms of what these teams are looking for, but Matt Grzelcyk, I mean, the guy is expiring soon, and just in terms of value for value, you'd be winning really big if you made a Grzelcyk for Nugent-Hopkins trade. But if you just assume this main idea, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Boston Bruins, how is this going to go down? One part of me is super intrigued as to seeing what Nugent-Hopkins could do when he's not pretty much the third best center on his team. Assume Bergeron leaves, assume Krejci leaves. You have Charlie Coyle in there, and you also have a few other guys that could be swapped around. But, ideally, none of these guys are Nugent-Hopkins. I like Charlie Coyle, I really do. I like Pavel Zacha as well. He's really bolstered up his career after the horrible start in New Jersey. But, none of these guys are 100-point players. Nugent-Hopkins, by technicality, is. I wouldn't say by magnitude of talent that he is, but he got 100 points somehow. So there's that. Is he able to replicate that on a team that does not have McDavid and Draisaitl? Is he able to replicate that in a weird, mirrored kind of way if he's been given more responsibility, more minutes, and maybe, let's say, better line mates? Because he's playing in the third line sometimes, he's playing with Draisaitl other times. It's a mix and match in Edmonton. But if you bring back some guys on Boston, you have some other players that are here for the long term, like David Pastrnak, for example. If you have Nugent-Hopkins setting up Pasta, that sounds pretty good to me. Like, that would be a little bit better, or maybe not even too much of a downgrade from playing with Draisaitl and McDavid. You have Taylor Hall signed here for a while, and Brad Marchand is still here too, so if you have Nugent-Hopkins playing some hockey as a first-line center with some extraordinarily talented wingers, who's to say that he's not able to go out there and get a 100-point season again on a team that's supposed to be as good as the Boston Bruins are? It's a strange argument, but maybe getting traded from Edmonton and not playing with Draisaitl and McDavid would actually benefit Nuge's career. Who really knows? So if you're a Boston Bruins fan, I want you to let me know in the comment section down below all your opinions about this player. What are your thoughts on Ryan Nugent-Hopkins heading over to your team as a potential replacement should Bergeron and Krejci not come back? If there is some sort of a trade, what would you feel comfortable giving up? The Bruins have been in this spot for a while where they don't really have too many significant prospects, and I mean, look, in this coming draft, they're missing their first, their second, and their fifth, so they don't have too much draft capital. Even next season, they still don't have their first 3 picks, so it's going to be tough to navigate this trade market and try to provide the Oilers with value that they actually would be looking for. They're a defenseman that the Bruins have, but I mean, a lot of these guys expire. Outside of Lindholm, McAvoy, and Carlo, nobody's signed past 2024. So, if you're a Bruins fan, what are your opinions on what it would actually take to get Nugent-Hopkins from the Oilers? And if you're an Oilers fan, same question. What do you think the Bruins have that would actually intrigue you and entice you to saying yes to a Nuge trade? There are a few defensemen here, but a lot of them expire, so yeah, if that's really the main priority that the Edmonton Oilers have, then you can let me know in the comments all your opinions about that. Maybe it's a winger instead. Maybe you need to bolster out the rest of your lineup with wingers like Jake DeBrusk, for example. Have him play in the middle of the bottom 6. It would be nice for his dad, since Louis DeBrusk is always in the middle of the benches there. It'd be nice for him to be around his son a little bit more. But if you're a fan of either of these teams, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What are your opinions about Nugent-Hopkins heading over to Boston? I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.